If you think about, I don't know how much you follow Brittany on social media or you keep up with what she's up to, but
Free Brittany.
yeah.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Talking Reality podcast. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Mike.
And today we are talking the reality of mental health from a fresh perspective, from the perspective of the law. Now, we've managed to get a guest on who could be considered an expert in this field, but we'll find that out. So, welcome to the podcast,
Thank
Roni.
you.
Welcome.
I'm honestly so excited to be here.
You
Told
look
you I've
it.
been having dreams about this.
Love it. So Roni, it's a pleasure to have you on. So, just for the listeners, I met Roni when I started working with you, didn't I? So we've known each other a little while.
Yeah.
But I just want to start the podcast by you giving us a brief explanation of how you got into mental health law.
Yeah, so I've been a mental health lawyer for about, I think I'm in my 6th year of it. So fresh from uni. Honestly, This is the most boring story because the first job I applied for turned out to be this one and I stuck it out. So had absolutely no idea what I was walking into, didn't know it was an area of law that you could practice. So I literally applied for a job, turned up, and here we are. So I'm a human rights lawyer that I specialise in mental health, so your right to liberty. And that's what I do. That's me.
So I think, Roni, I think I kind of applied for the same job. Well, not the same job as you. Did you go in as a paralegal? Yeah. Okay. So
Did she take your space?
Did she take my space? Well, no, mate.
6 years prior.
She's been doing 6 years.
Oh, sorry.
No, but my point was going to be that I went into the same thing and I looked at it and thought, that sounds interesting, mental health law. And I've got to be honest, I didn't really know what it was about.
No.
So I guess, I know a little bit about it now, but for our listeners, I think there's a lot of people out there that wouldn't have a clue what mental health law is, because it's quite, Mike, do you know?
Well, it sounds like such a broad, title.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
could mean anything, couldn't it?
Exactly. So
I don't think
give
your
us,
average
us
person...
as much as you can, a brief synopsis of what mental health law is.
So I guess in practice, there's really 2 sides to it. So there's civil and criminal.
Yeah.
So civil law, it's your average Joe who experiences mental health problems and ends up at the attention of services. That normally means detained in hospital on section.
Okay.
So they didn't do anything wrong. They're just experiencing mental health problems. It could be short-term, long-term. They could spend a brief spell in hospital or a long term in hospital. And then the criminal side of things is you're not guilty by reason of insanity or insanity pleas. People who have committed offences or they've become unwell in prison, so they've been transferred to hospital. So they have this criminal aspect of things where they may or may not be culpable for their actions because of experiencing mental health problems. So the crux of it is these people find their way into hospital, and because they didn't choose to lose their liberty, so one of their human rights.
So that's always against their will, is it?
Yes. So when I'm involved, yes, you can informally take yourself to hospital for treatment, but you then wouldn't necessarily engage someone like me, because the bulk of my work is advocating on people's behalves to be discharged, so to rejoin society.
Okay.
Yeah.
You say rejoin society. So when someone's in hospital and they've been sectioned, right, criminal or civil, are they then no longer part of society?
I think the biggest problem is that being detained in hospital is normally like the worst case scenario. So it's nothing else worked, care in the community didn't work, or people didn't know how to deal with this person. So this is one of my biggest sort of issues with people who find their way into hospital, is that a lot of them really don't need to be there, and it's just because they don't fit the mould of society or normality or what people expect of the general public.
Is that because we can't facilitate them in society?
Yeah,
we don't have the capacity to do that right now.
Yeah, I guess a bit of both. So if you went to Tesco's and you saw some guy who was wearing odd clothes, acting a bit strange, you're sort of shying away from him, you're thinking that's a bit of an odd guy. He makes me nervous, I don't like that, I'm going to, speak to the manager, we'll see if we can get the police to come remove this person, that's someone that you found uncomfortable to be around, but they're not doing anyone any harm. They're just being them. So that person didn't fit to any of our view of what the general public and society should be.
It makes sense, yeah.
Ship them off to hospital. You know, these people can't conform, so off they go.
Mike, you said, didn't you, when we were discussing this before, you in your role, you witnessed something quite similar to what Ronnie's describing with the customer.
So there's where I'm currently working around uni. There's a customer that comes in, so it's a retail job, and he comes in and he spends at least £10 in there, but he does this on each visit. So he's buying like 3 coffees from Costa, which will come up to about £10, and he's doing it on a daily basis. But he has no, us as in the staff have observed him, and we can see that it's kind of erratic to be coming in on your own. He's told us he doesn't work, but he's coming in constantly, and he just buys his drinks, stares at the staff, and then he goes. Yeah. And actually the other day he was staring at a customer. I think I told you this, didn't I? He was staring at a customer, and the customer sort of looked back at him. And then as the customer left, Mike was still staring at him. That's the name of the guy. And I felt like, because the customer said something back to him like, have you got a problem? And Mike just sort of didn't respond. Yeah. But he walked off, and I thought to myself, well, I kind of wish I could go and speak to that customer and say, this guy's got some kind of mental health problem. He's not staring at you because he wants to engage in conflict with you. It's just that he has some kind of issue that we don't know enough about. Sure. Do you see what I mean? But it could be perceived by anyone, just like you said, like these behaviours can be perceived from people differently. So one guy could go, oh, he's a frat, he wants a fight. Yeah. Another guy goes, oh, he's obviously struggling with something. Yeah, so it's uncomfortable because that's not what you expect of the general public. Yeah, right? Because we are all conforming to society and the norms and the values. Yeah. And one of them isn't hanging around the shop. And at some point someone said, on your own and staring at people. Yeah, so eventually people are going to go, well, this is out of the norm. What's up with this guy? But that customer looked like, the way he looked back at Mike was as if Mike was didn't have any kind of mental health problem. So there's a couple of things that I'll pick from that. I mean, have you ever engaged this person in conversation? Mike, yeah. So has he spoken to you about experiencing? He's told me he told me he jumped out of a window when he was a child, and it kind of escalated from there. And he says a lot of random stuff. He said he almost got eaten by a crocodile at Slimbridge. I mean, that's just real random. He's always saying he needs to get back into work. So he's been dropped from his employment. I don't know for what reason. You could assume perhaps the mental health problem. But he said sometimes he comes up to me, he goes, you know I'm unwell, don't you? Oh, okay. But that's as far as it goes. You know, it's a shame that people feel they need to explain themselves though, isn't it? Because everyone's entitled to their privacy and their private life. Mike, you can tell he's aware that the staff have spoken about him. So people are, he's cottoned on to... Yeah, so I think that's why he's come up to me and gone, Mike, you know that I'm unwell, don't you? Yeah. Oh, that's quite sad, isn't it? It is sad because the public look at him as just some idiot, but I always try and look at people and try and get like a rational explanation of why this person's behaving in a certain way, because you can always trace the steps back. Well, the thing is as well, it's like, the thing is in mental health, I'm not going to say everyone, but a lot of people, I think they look at someone and they just take the person in front of them, the physical object in front of them. Yeah. Not a lot of people are going to sit there and take the time to kind of think, has that person got a mental health problem potentially? Or, are they just going to take, let's say Mike, for example, just take his behavior as if, right, this guy is displaying some form of conflict towards me because he's staring at me. And most people just think, I think a lot of people's response would be, what are you looking at, mate? Like, they'll get, there's almost that element of aggression. It's like caveman approach, isn't it? Yeah, it's almost. It's like, if someone's staring at you, it could be for an element of conflict, but it's doubtful. Yeah. Do you know, it's more often than not, probably someone has got a mental health illness. And I think there's nowhere near enough education about it for a start. Like, I know it's more prominent now and it's almost like a topical thing that everyone talks about.
But it's like I remember being in school. You never learned anything about it when in our day really in school.
Not
did you?
really, no.
Never.
I think
Never.
social media's
Wasn't
blown it up
massively, yeah.
which is a good thing. Which is a good thing. But I think as we delve into more of Ronnie's story, we're going to find out that it's more prominent and it's in the eye. But I think from my perspective, what I learned in my short time working in mental health law is there's this. I don't know, going into the hospitals and seeing the reality of people who really do suffer quite badly with their mental health. Like, I don't think the general public are aware of what goes on. Unless you're involved in that world, I don't think the general public are aware of what goes on.
Yeah, unless you have exposure, why would you know, right?
True, completely.
And what I'm talking about and the job I have, I deal with the extreme. So these are...
Of course, yeah.
The only lawful way you can be deprived of your liberty, taken to hospital, detained against your will, is if you present a risk to yourself or other people. So these people are at a stage where either they're, self-neglecting, they're not taking care of themselves, they're not having adequate food or fluid intakes, or there are risks to the public. They're confrontational, aggressive, maybe. So when I go to hospital, you've come to some of the hospitals, it can be a shocking experience. I'm very desensitized to anything now, 6 years on.
Imagine, yeah.
Of course.
And it doesn't match what you see, in the community, because those people are perhaps removed, right? Because it would be uncomfortable for people to see people that act in a way that we don't expect them to act. So, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer to anything, is there? We've all experienced or observed people to be acting out of the norm. It's just, I guess, how you deal with that or how you think about that person.
I guess I'm going to give some context, and I've ummed and ahed massively about sharing this, just because it's, I'm conscious of how it could come across.
Yeah.
But I was sectioned in 2019, only for a short period of time. I spent a week in hospital in the end, right? And I guess I can give some personal experience of people who maybe not. I mean, obviously that's a very short period of time in comparison to some people spend their whole lives in hospital, so it is a short period of time. But my experience of what happened that day, so I'm in hospital. I tried to take my own life. I was going through a horrific time in my life. And the approved mental health professional and the doctor, that part of it whilst I'm in hospital is a bit fuzzy, but they basically said I needed to go to hospital for my own safety. Essentially, I was a risk to myself. And I remember walking into hospital and I'd never felt fear quite like that before, because you just don't know what you're going to expect. And you've got this perspective of what you see on TV that, people in wrapped up in white coats. That was my perspective anyway. And I was just like, fear, because I hadn't ever been in an environment like that before. So I walk in and I sit and talk to a nurse for about half an hour whilst I'm in there, just not really talking. I'm just crying constantly and just saying I don't want to be here anymore. And I then walk into this main room, the living room, and this woman kind of gets up and screams in my face because wants to know who I am. Who are you? Who are you? What are you doing here? And, the nurse just says, he's another patient, he's fine. And then that kind of made my anxiety and fear levels rise. And I think, thankfully, a kind girl come and spoke to me and kind of put me at ease that night. And progressively, I got better throughout my time there, right? I spent a long time then, post leaving hospital, with support from the mental health team, the outsourced team. But I got to say, whilst I was in hospital, and as I reiterate, it was only a week. However, I felt like there's a lot of free time in there for people to be alone with your thoughts. And, it's kind of like, your mental health is not something that switches off at weekends, but I felt like, from my perspective, some of the support switches off at weekends. And I don't know, I just kind of, I can understand from being in that environment for a short period of time why people might think it is a punishment, or why you could have those thoughts. For sure. I mean, it's...
I think the way you've described that as well, it almost does kind of mirror a prison system. In terms of the way that you're confined to a space. You have almost like...
You're given your bed.
You're given a bed,
And it's like, I mean, that even when you go in there and they take all anything that you could harm yourself with, your aerosols, which is understandable. It is understandable, but I imagine it's probably very,
don't they? So
and of course, they're trying to protect you. Fundamentally, they are, but I don't think their intentions are wrong or bad. But I think, I don't know. I can understand
trauma in itself.
Yeah, if someone goes there and spends a longer period of time there, that could create more trauma. It could potentially make a situation which is bad even worse. And I think, we spoke earlier, didn't we, before we started filming, about how I kind of asked the question of how do you fix the problem, but it's like who are we to fix it? I don't know the answer to fix it, and it's like everyone's gonna have different perspectives, but. I think it's an interesting question of whether or not it's punishment or treatment, because I think the lines are blurred.
You talk about stigma attached to the word suicide, right? So you've all heard the phrase committing suicide, right?
Yeah.
Well, committing is a criminal offence. You commit an offence.
Yeah.
So that word is stigmatised already before you've even said it.
That's true.
The stigma comes before the suicide. So they're actually changing it now, and it's called completing suicide rather than committing suicide, because back in the day, if a family member committed suicide, the family would be criminally liable for that, because it was an embarrassment and a shame on the family. So, an offence has taken place, whereas through the years, and don't get me wrong, it's happening very painfully slow, people are trying to remove the stigma or correct terminology, because it does have a massive impact in the way you view something.
For sure.
Absolutely. I think they're always going to be playing catch up, though, with something that's just had
that's the law,
decades, to manifest into what we have now. Those stigmas are so powerful, aren't they?
And you hear about movements, there's, the LGBTQ plus movements, there's, equal rights, there's, Black Lives Matter, all of these movements that have this worldwide audience and time and energy and attention on them. With mental health, these are such vulnerable people, 99% of the time, that they don't have their own voice. So how do you cause a movement unless you have passionate friends and family? And another stigma of poor mental health is a poor support system. It sort of goes hand in hand, that this person hasn't had people to talk to or been in receipt of support. So they're the ones that are going downhill. This is sort of the reality of it.
That's an interesting point, which makes me want to ask you the question of what are the sort of demographic that you see? Is it a diverse bunch, or do you see trends of like?
Yeah, I guess. So, it depends on where you are as well in the country, because certain areas specialise in different hospitals. So the Southwest is quite well known for never having beds. So beds are always full. Okay. They've got really bad learning disability services. So anybody with learning disabilities, autism, they normally get transferred out up the country to London, all of these things. So unfortunately, it's postcode lottery.
Yeah.
But the main bulk of work, unfortunately, I would say, is men in their early 20s to late 20s.
Really?
That's sort of the prime age for deteriorating mental health. Your personality is legally or medically considered developing until you reach about 25.
Yeah,
so around this time, substance misuse can play a big part. There's lots of experimenting in late teens and early 20s, relationship breakdowns, finding your independence, the threat of life, crippling debts, all of those things. So I'd say normally young males, but I work with kids. I've had an 11-year-old client before, who's been detained. I've had the OAPs who are dementia-ridden, that's a mental disorder, and everyone in between. So it's
quite a broad spectrum then.
Massively.
Yeah.
When I was going through what I was going through, I went to the doctors a number of times. And I was given antidepressants, things to help me sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But they were just masking the problem. They weren't fixing it. So one of the big issues is I just don't think that the NHS, the health systems, they just don't know how to fix this problem. It's so big and diverse.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's not necessarily a poor reflection on them. It is. It's not as simple as when there is a broken leg. It is easier to fix.
Yeah.
You can see the problem. Doctors can look at it and be right. All right, your leg's fractured there. We need to put a cast there. Blah blah blah. But when it's a mental health problem, you can't see the problem.
Because it's an abstract thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And there's loads of faults of it, because people can play on it. Like, we all know some people that have got sick notes because it's that easy, because they didn't want to go to work. So it's vulnerable because it can be manipulated, but at the same time, it is a real thing. A lot of people are suffering with it, but it's hard to...
You can't prove it.
Because it's an abstract thing. You can't physically see it. You can't go, right, Ron, you've definitely got this. Yeah, and that opens up a can of worms
because you can get multiple diagnoses from different doctors.
But that's what I'm saying.
Like you say,
opens up a can of worms.
One doctor could say, right, I think you've got bipolar. No. The other doctor's thinking, no, he's got anxiety, or he's got...
And then some patients be acting up to the label that they've been given, because
labels
that can change your mindset. I think
there's so many interesting things you said, like psychiatry is not an exact science. So
true.
A lot of it is guesswork. So if I give you the example of ECT, electrocompulsive therapy, you think, oh my God, that's a torture thing that we used to do back in the day, but that still happens today. No one knows why electrocuting someone's brain would help, but it seems to have helped in some cases, so it's still practiced. It used to be the go-to treatment for depression in women.
I didn't know that.
Go and have a couple courses of ECT, will shock your brain. We're not sure if anything's going to go bad or good, but this seems to have worked for a number of people. So this is what I mean, it's guesswork. And like you said, the majority of my clients will either dispute elements of their diagnosis or the entirety of their diagnosis. And that's because putting someone in a neat box, because then you can say, oh, well, X equals Y, this is the diagnosis, we'll give this treatment. It doesn't work because the mind is too complex. Everybody's experience is so relative. All of our childhoods are so different. You cannot say this is what caused this person to become mentally unwell or experience this thing. There's just not enough known about it.
We don't know enough about neuroanatomy.
Absolutely not.
We've got CT scans. We can see what's going on in the brain, but we can't translate what it means.
But
and
we
that's
feel,
the problem.
and it's feeling, isn't it? We all feel different things.
There's too many variables to it to be, so concisely like, this is what you have. Here's your label.
But there's also amazing things about mental health that have really shocked me as I've sort of grown exposure to different things. So you have your sort of well-known diagnoses. We all sort of have a gist of what bipolar is. You're up and you're down. Depression's you're low. Schizophrenia is maybe you're experiencing things that other people don't experience. But one of the most interesting diagnoses I come across is emotionally unstable personality disorder. So it is what it reads. Your personality is such that you are unstable, you're unable to process emotions properly, you may therefore revert to self-harming or head-banging or, suicide attempts, or there's a range of things. One of the really interesting things about this is developing voices. So you normally think, oh, somebody's, hearing voices in their head, they must be schizophrenic, they're psychotic. These are the labels you'd give them. But this type of diagnosis was somebody's experiencing something so traumatic that they don't know how to deal with it in the moment. So I'll give you the example of a kid whose parents are arguing and there's domestic abuse going on. So they are witnessing something and they have absolutely no idea what to do with that because it's traumatic and they're not able to process it properly. So voices may occur and the voices will be really negative. This is your fault. You should kill yourself. Da 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 da. But what happens sometimes is these are really protective things. So voices could say, why don't you go and throw yourself off that bridge? Come on, get your stuff. We're going outside. You're going to throw yourself off that bridge. So what you think is, okay, this is a really negative, command hallucination. This person's a risk to themselves. But what's happened is a person who's not able to deal with something in the moment has now developed a coping strategy that's physically removed them from a situation. So now they've gone out to walk and find a bridge. Doesn't mean they're going to act on what's happening, but the mind has protected itself with a command that didn't come from the person to remove them from a situation. I hope that makes sense. It's wildly complex, but incredible at the same time. Could you imagine? You've got absolutely no idea that that's happening.
So
you think that
forge these ideas together.
It's self-protection. If you just cut your arm, you're going to experience a short, sharp piece of pain that's going to distract you from this horrible thing that you can't cope with right now because you can't process it properly. So have something physical instead of something mental for a short moment. That's why self-harm is, I can't speak to all of self-harm, but that's something that I can understand, you know. This emotion is too much to deal with. So give yourself a burst of reality. Ouch, that hurt, right? It takes you out of it. It snaps you out of it, right? So that I just think I'm fascinated with mental health. This is why I have such a passion for the people that I come across. They are my clients. No two people have ever been remotely the same in what they experience, or the treatment they need, or the support systems they have, or their histories. So yeah, labeling someone is actually pretty harmful, I would say, because
I think that's a good point you made there as well, that you don't see two of the same sort of patient or client. Like with my degree, when we work in the clinic and we treat patients, it's because it's chiropractic. It's like, well, we've seen this MSK problem before, so we know what to do. Yeah. Right. Whereas if it's mental health, it's kind of like,
this is a brand new problem. Every time.
Or it kind of looks like this, but there's something else added to this, and then it's what's this added piece? So you can never it's never a concrete answer. Whereas an MSK injury, it's just like, femur's broke, Achilles gone, avulsion, fracture, whatever. Like, and then you know what it is and you know how to treat it. But like with the mental health, you know, it can look familiar, and then just take you down a completely different path. Like,
for sure. You said about medication as well. You touched upon that. You know, the GP says, oh, you feel this thing, here's this treatment, because that's what we've linked it to. So, you know, X equals Y. And psychiatry, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can only speak to my own experience with it. But it seems to be medicating first and talking second is the way that things are practiced. Yeah. It's quicker, it's easier. If somebody's manic or distressed or, you know, upset or suicidal or anything, pump them full of medication. They're gonna level out and calm down, and then maybe we can talk about what's happened. Whereas what I think should be happening is talk first. You know, talk first. What can be the resolution? Do you need
get to the root of the cause? Yeah. Because medication really just masks the problem,
and ultimately that is kind of a guessing game with the doctors. They're kind of like, oh, we'll try this, see if it works. We'll try this, see if it works. It might make you worse, it might make you bad, but we'll try this. And then ultimately you just never know. Some of it's just like picking a name out of a hat, you know. Yeah. I think one thing we haven't really got to so far, Ronnie, is we've talked a lot about mental health, but so obviously you're a lawyer, right? Why would someone who is suffering with mental health, why would they need a lawyer?
Well, nobody chooses to be deprived of their liberty. So
of course,
your right to liberty is your Article 5 human right. And if you are to be deprived of your liberty, it has to be in a way that's in accordance with the law. So you get the right to legal representation. And the majority of people who are sectioned are eligible for free legal representation, which is me. So I work for legal aid. I work for a company, but we are legal aid lawyers. And basically, if somebody wants to appeal or contest their detention, they shouldn't have to pay for it because they didn't choose it for themselves, right? Because otherwise you've got financial problems if the wealthy get out and So I am basically paid by legal aid to come in and be a voice for very vulnerable people. So the majority of that is helping people get out of hospital because they don't want to be there. But there's also challenges to medication, bringing in second opinion doctors for, a clear view, reassessment of something, more access to the community, transfer hospital, my family's not able to come in, upholding their rights, being a voice, advocating for them. That's what I do.
Yeah. I think one thing is, interesting to talk about now, which has been prominent in the news relating to what we're talking about, is Britney Spears. Impossible not to talk about it, I think.
Probably the most famous case is someone being sectioned and the rights removed.
Yeah. What's your perspective?
And again, if you think back to, I think it's 2007 that happened.
Yes, we all remember.
Massive Britney fan, obviously. But I think back then, when she was sort of shaving her hair off, everyone was just like, this woman's crazy. There was no sympathy.
Absolutely not.
I can remember the
media tore her apart.
Yeah, the media had a storm. Like, they were all outside that barber shop and just filming her, doing it, laughing, sort of egging her on to do more and all this business. They probably did realise this is someone who's vulnerable, but there was just no sympathy or no empathy,
compassion. It was just
struggling with their mental health here.
Yeah.
But it was just it was like a show. It was a performance for them.
Think about how polished celebs are. You know, they filter themselves. They show you the best sides. So to see someone completely break down in a very public way was fascinating, and we all remember it, don't we? I mean, you can quote the year off your head.
I can't remember anyone showing any compassion.
No, I don't.
That could just be me and my memory.
I mean, your memories are fractious, aren't they?
Yeah,
and they never completely.
But I don't I feel like if that happened today, there'd be bags of support.
Mm.
Would there though? I mean, look at Caroline Flack.
Right.
I mean, different circumstances, but quite clearly, you know, her mental health was not in the right place, otherwise she wouldn't take her own life. But the media, once they've got their eyes set on someone, they're like, it's like a lion when it pounces. There's just no sense of a human being behind the story of whatever the story is. There's no sense of a human life. It's whatever will sell those papers.
I think what I meant by that is maybe not the support from the media. They wouldn't, of course. They got papers to sell. But I think from the fans, and the public, they would call the media out on that was wrong.
True.
What you did outside that hair salon or barber shop, whatever, was wrong. I think they would be called out. In 2007, it was just, this is the norm, man. This is Hollywood. In 2007, this is what happens.
Yeah.
Justin Bieber did something similar. He went off the rails.
Right.
And Lindsay Lohan. I mean, there's loads
Kanye
of
as well.
Yeah.
It's difficult, isn't it? I guess if you think about, again, we're talking about social media. You guys have already touched on this, but the media, they have this sort of responsibility to present us with what's happening, right? The good, the bad, the ugly, and expose the ugly. And if you take an example of like Caroline Flack, they exposed something that happened that was ugly, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember it was sort of breaking?
With their partner, wasn't it?
Something happened with their partner.
Yeah.
So everybody hated Caroline Flack because the media told the truth.
Well, everyone was saying about how like men's rights are just as important in
exactly.
domestic violence.
It caused
that's right.
women's
Divide. There was a big divide. Yeah.
But then she committed suicide, completed suicide.
Yeah.
And everybody went, I can't believe the media did that. But they weren't owning the fact that they were bought into it. They were gossiping about it. You know, it's this swap. So I mean, how do you get things like this right? What's the right?
Well, ultimately, it just comes down to you shouldn't ever believe what you read, because you could be getting told 10% of the story.
100%.
Quite literally 10% of the story. You could be 100%, but you just never know. We all know the media lie. They'll do whatever, like you just said, they've got papers to sell, or they've got, certain levels of people, they've got to see it on Instagram and Facebook and whatever. Do you know what I mean? And they'll say whatever, they'll sell the story in whatever way makes it most pleasing, I guess.
If you think about, I don't know how much you follow Britney on social media or you keep up with what she's up to, but she's carried on doing Vegas shows, earning so much money. So she's got social media accounts that she runs, and she's almost like living a life, right?
Yeah.
From the outside, it looks
from
like
perspective,
if she's able to go and rehearse perform, earn money, it's very strange for the public to find out that she was under this control, right? And in America, it's conservatorship. We don't have it in the UK, but we have similar things.
Right.
But yeah, this Free Britney movement was people finding out that her dad pretty much controlled absolutely everything she did, and things like wouldn't let her get married because didn't think that she had the right, sort of the ability to choose to. Was very influential in decision making about her kids or what she was doing. He put her forward for the Vegas dates, which is like a form of exploiting her, I guess, is what people read into
exploiting. What I don't quite understand about that situation is, so I assume to get that legally binded, there would need to be some assessment with a doctor to say that you don't have the cognitive capacity to make your decisions. Tick. Right? So now the dad, her father, has control of her finances and her decision making. Right. But then how could he put her out on stage? Right. Because if you haven't got the cognition for that, how could you have the cognition to go out in front of thousands of people and perform songs that
because she's making a lot of people rich.
Yeah.
Because she's making a lot of people rich.
So this is why everybody jumped on board, I guess, the Free Britney movement, is that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right. So you're saying somebody just is so vulnerable they can't make these life decisions for themselves, so I'm going to make them for her. Go and perform for money, and I have control of your finances. So it's like a conflict as well. Like, Do you know what I mean? It's
Yes.
difficult. So I'm really not able to speak to what happens in American law, because I always see what happens in America as a bit more of an extreme UK version. But in the UK, we have, or the closest thing we have is deputyship.
Right.
So for somebody who lacks capacity, there's two types of deputyship. So there's one for welfare. So somebody can be appointed by the court to make decisions about your health and treatment. And then one's for finances and property. So what happens with your estate? How do we manage your affairs, money, things like that. So if you think about your grandma who's got dementia, she's no longer got the capacity to make decisions about these things. So somebody will get appointed to act in her best interests and make these decisions on her behalf to sort of promote her life and make all of these best interest decisions. So when you think about it from that UK perspective, there's legal safeguards, there's protections, it's all about the best interest. And if that's ever questioned, the whole thing's sort of, ultimately questioned again. It's a legal process that's being perhaps not carried out properly. So this is what we compare it to. How does something like the Britney situation happen? Because we couldn't imagine it happening here. Like, who safeguarded her? Where was the stopgap? Who called the dad out? Is this in her best interest to continue doing this? Are you sure? Like, she has the capacity for that? She can perform to 10 million people, but she can't look after her kids. Like, is that she can't choose to be married to someone she's been with for years, but she can go on stage every night?
There's a conflict, isn't there?
So I'd like to think that the UK system does a smidge better when it comes to the protection.
I think the way you've described it, I think it does.
The thresholds are there, there's safeguards there, but then again, capacity.
I know, Ronnie, that you said before we started, you had a couple of questions you wanted to ask us, and I can't remember one of them, but it was quite interesting.
Yeah, one of them was about your coping skills, like your developed coping strategies. So away from things that you've been taught or learned or seen on TV, what helps you cope in really difficult times? Because I could give you my example is laughter. I laugh at everything, good and bad. If I'm put on the spot and I feel awkward, I tend to laugh. And my partner says it's one of my ugliest personality traits. If he trips and hurts himself, I burst into laughter. I find it hilarious.
Falls over and cracks his head open. He's just in hysterics.
He's on the deck bleeding out and you're just here laughing.
Yeah, this is what I do.
I think he needs some help, Ronnie. I don't care.
I think it's a coping strategy. It's just what I do. Laugh at everything.
I think laughter,
good and bad.
That's definitely a great coping skill for sure.
Of course. And they say, don't they? Like, even if you smile, like, it can improve your mood, even if you're not happy. So.
Yeah, you can trick your brain to thinking you're happy.
But I don't think I ever consciously started just laughing at things. Do you know what I mean? I think I just developed that as a something.
Do you just do it when you're by yourself, like in the room?
Yeah.
You just start laughing?
I do make myself laugh. I think I'm really funny, so I do laugh at myself a lot. Yeah.
Too much info, Ronnie.
Moving on.
So what's your kind of coping skills, Mike?
I for me, so like the staple has been the gym. Like, that's the anchor for me. That like, I can be in a bad mood, and if I get in the gym, I get a session in, it kind of relieves that stress.
Yeah, the endorphins, right?
Yeah, and then once I'm back in that mindset, I can look at a problem and think, well, there's an adversity here, but there's an opportunity for triumph. If you always think that line in your head, then you know that every problem there's a fix, and with the fix there's experience, and with the experience you can make sure it doesn't happen again, or you're better equipped the next time it happens. So I always keep that fresh in my head.
I think using the gym is interesting because it's exercise is going to be a common coping strategy that a lot of people use.
Physiological thing,
You're sort of it's physical. Yeah, you're feeling it. You're feeling like you've achieved because your body feels it. But also you've distracted yourself for that time.
Yeah.
And you're also getting in touch. You're like grounding yourself because you're focusing on how you feel and how you react to things. Like, that's a self-soothe, right? You might think, oh, I'll do this because it's different to what I was thinking, but you've learned to soothe yourself, surely. Yeah.
What about you, Nath?
I think for me, it's what's really, really, really important. So I come from a big family. I have one of 10 children, right? So I don't necessarily like being by myself a lot. I love to be around people, talking, laughing, whatever. Yeah. So if I'm struggling, what's really important for me is to not spend too much time alone. Yeah. And just to be around people, be with people, and talking. just talking. I mean, the gym's a big one for me as well, but I
Yeah.
think more importantly is, and that's not on social media. That's not like, it has to be real life conversations, you know,
Like
because
interactions.
yeah, that real life interaction. Yeah, I need that, because when I'm sat alone with my own thoughts, they can take you to places, can't they? You know, and sometimes I know that, you know, they say don't let your thoughts control you, you control them. But sometimes, you know, when you're in that dark place or whatever, you're having a bad time, they can, you know, they can take you places, can't they? And I think it's important to, if you're like that, if you're like someone like me, and you do struggle in those times of being alone, just go be with someone, whether that's a family member, a friend, whoever. But, you know, that's one really big thing for me.
I guess the only thing that I'd add is, you think about meaning of life, right? Why are we here? What are we doing? What's our purpose? Is it to have a great career and to influence people and, you know, to be in the history books and whatnot? But for me, it's just to I guess, to be happy, you know, to feel happy more than I feel anything else.
And to engage with the Talk and Reality podcast.
And to be considered a third, because
yes, there may be
I am available.
There may be a poll trending.
Maybe a marketing position.
Yeah.
Guys, good things come in threes. I feel like you need me. I've got this, you know, I can match your energy. I'm here. Like, yeah, let's ask the people.
We'll listen to the listeners and see what they've got to say.
Okay, but I'm
Ronnie.
available.
Okay.
Yeah. If you guys need a third.
Okay, well, we'll think about that. Yeah, and we can talk contracts and that sort of thing. But
thanks for having me. I love what you guys are doing.
Ronnie,
truly.
honestly,
It's been great.
It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and I think like I've actually learnt more of you again today than when I was working with you, and I think you've got a great knowledge in terms of your field, and I think you're perfect in, you know, what you do, because I get that sense of true compassion. I know your head's not going to fit through the door, but true compassion, you know, and just kind of you're in the right job. You are, because you really care about people.
So. I love my job. I care about my job a lot. Yeah, it's nice to feel like you make even a smidgen of a difference in someone else's life, you know.
100%. And you're definitely doing that. And Thank
you. That's very kind.
I hope everybody can take something from your episode today.
Hope so. Yeah.
Anything else to add, Mike?
No, I think they've
Can
given
you say
us
some nice things about me?
You've been a great guest. There might be a marketing position.
Yeah, we're not promising anything. I mean, we haven't. I mean, the social media guy at the moment,
there's no
he's not fitting the bill. But moving forward, there could be a position in marketing for you to start off with as an intern.
Co-host.
Yeah, co-host.
Cool.
All right, let's see if Ronnie on the TRP co-host is going to trend or not. Right. Anyway, all jokes aside, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Give us a like and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.